Independent pay bodies representing teachers and NHS workers, including nurses, have recommended pay rises of 5.5%. Experts say, wow, that could total an extra £3.5 billion, and taxes may need to increase to cover the cost. The amount is more than the government have budgeted for and well above the inflation rate of 2%. Further strike action could be on the cards, though, if they can't reach a deal with the unions. Yesterday, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves hinted at some form of pay rise for public sector workers. So this is the key moment where she talks about it to the BBC's Laura Kuenssberg.
And later this month, we will make announcements around public sector pay when we do that full analysis of the public finances and public spending. But we also know that there is a cost to not settling, a cost of further industrial action, a cost in terms of the challenge that we face in recruiting and retaining doctors and nurses and teachers as well. But we'll do it in a proper way and make sure that the sums add up.
So, Charlie, you go first.
Well, it's perfectly legitimate and acceptable to say, yes, pay anybody anything that they want, if it can come within your own departmental budgets, if there's savings that can be made, efficiency savings within the Department for Education and within the NHS, fine, go for it, fill your boots, happy days. But if it comes on the back of more borrowing, which ultimately the taxpayer has to fund later down the line, or a younger generation has to fund at some point, or increased taxes, again, impacting on hardworking people, everybody across this country, at a time when the economy has just been secured, with inflation coming down, with the economy starting to grow, the fastest growing economy in the G7, it will, and then, you've got to fund it. But then you've got the risk, if you don't fund things, the risk of strike and industrial action, which, again, as Rachel was absolutely right to say, has a cost in itself, not just economic costs, but the cost of children's future.
So you're 50-50 on this?
No, I'm saying, you can increase their wages, but it cannot come at the expense of increased taxes or more borrowing. It has to come within departmental budgets.
I see.
If they can't do that, which I don't think they will be able to, because education unions will push back to say, well, no, we can't cut in our own department. Then there'll be this conflict. And so it shouldn't go ahead.
You give the teachers a rise and you take it from the books budget.
I think that we have to be realistic, and £3.5 billion is actually relative to what the government spends per annum is a splash in the ocean. I think it's also crucial here, especially when it comes to teachers. We cannot retain our teachers. We can't find maths teachers. We can't find science teachers. We can't find language teachers. The turnover is quite extraordinary. And every time you have to get a temp in, every time you have to place an advert, that costs money. Ditto, nursing. Auxiliary staff, people pulled in on temp, they cost more. It's a false economy. Rachel Reeves is right. And the other thing we're talking about here is the lower paid end. We're not talking about police. By the way, police are mainly male. We're not talking predominantly about doctors. She mentioned them in a glib way, but I think actually she's focusing on teachers and nurses. 83% of teachers are female. 90% of nurses are female. Historically, they have been consistently undervalued and underpaid. I say, here's to their pay rise.
Really? So you would give them a pay rise, but would you want it to come out of their departments, or would you say we'll raise taxes?
Well, interestingly, we're saving a fortune because we're no longer fiddling about with Rwanda. I mean, there's all sorts of schemes that have just hit the bin.
Well, that money's gone already, I'm afraid.
But it has gone already, but there are lots of profligate ways in which we have wasted money. I think closer relations with Europe will see the economy grow much faster than we anticipate. I think Rachel Reeves, actually, they're saying it's really terrible. But actually, I think they're finding that there's low inflation, projected growth. They have inherited not the sticky wicket that, for example, Rishi Sunak inherited a year ago. And I think you'll find there's money there for £3.5 billion.
Antonia in East Sussex, what do you think? Should she give them an above inflation pay rise?
Well, basically, nurses have seen their wages fallen by a fifth since 2010. We're 40,000 nurses short. Student nurses dropped 27% over the last 3 years. Essentially, we need nurses. And the most critical thing, Rachel Reeves says their costs are not giving a pay rise. The cost would be too few nurses on a shift. Patient death increases by 3% each time there's nurses missing on a shift. So it's about patient safety. It's about we're in the sixth largest economy, and we're having corridor care nursing, which is unsafe, unacceptable, and undignified.
Are you a nurse yourself, yeah?
I am a nurse myself. And, I have struggled financially, and many of my colleagues do, and they're having to make really hard financial choices. Even with working overtime at weekends and evenings, they're still struggling to make ends meet. And we need to make an attractive profession. And as Charlie mentioned, yes, taxpayers are struggling, if they have to pay an increased tax. However, we have taxpayers languishing on the waiting list. The whole NHS.
Yeah, but I don't know if we can raise. We've got the highest taxes for 75 years. I don't know if they can go any higher without something very bad happening. I don't know. So, but maybe they can, as Tessa says, they can save money on. Where do you even start? Rwanda. Photocopying.
Yeah, I mean, there will always be efficiency. Look, the NHS is obviously the pride and joy of this country, but there are still problems with the NHS.
Obviously, that's not.
But so you can make better spending decisions within our healthcare system. Obviously, there is a huge backlog in the NHS that needs to be busted, but you don't go about it by necessarily just tinkering with, maybe unions getting involved with inflation, pay rises here, there, and everywhere. You don't threaten it with industrial action, as is what's already come out in the papers, and you're seeing this time and time again. And I'm afraid you'll see it throughout this Labour government, with the unions flexing their muscles, trying to get more money out of the taxpayer. But this is but the fundamental point is that the country has just gone through an election where the party that is now in government has ruled out tax rises. Now, they should have been honest about it to the public before going to the polls to say, actually, there are systemic issues there. We may have to put up taxes.
I don't think
they
didn't
will.
Do that. I don't think they do have to put up taxes. I really don't. I think she's front-footed this, Rachel Reeves. She's taken the initiative. She has probably left the Tory party thinking, how do we respond to this? Because actually, it's not that much money in the big scheme.
Come on, don't say that.
I'm so sorry.
You can excuse any waste of money by saying it's not that much.
But if you are offsetting against that,
waste, but
disruption,
it's just
industrial action, recruitment costs, paying for temp staff, actually she's right.
That's different.
You're offsetting a bunch of costs.
That means that actually you spend the money and you save more money than you're spending. That would be a good reason to do it. Ian in Cornwall, hi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure, Ian. What do you think? Should she pay the money over? I mean, it will. I suppose in the end, it's people who are in the private sector who have to pay it.
Well, I'm an ex-deputy head from East London, 27 years, and I think that this is what they deserve in the least. And being someone who's just come out of heart surgery in a hospital where they work hours that all got hours sent, they really do deserve the money. They really do. Don't forget, the nursing staff were there right the way through the pandemic, and teachers were still working through the pandemic. I know my own son-in-law, who's a maths graduate, teaches in Plymouth. He needs a pay rise. One of the easy ways for them would be if they scrapped, say, student debt after 5 years in the job. That would give them an instant pay rise. Both him and my daughter are paying their graduate taxes at 7%.
Yes, I get it. But listen, we had a graph up the other day and it said something like the number of staff in the NHS has gone up 20%, the number of money in the NHS has gone up 22%, and the number of extra patients being treated has only gone up 3%. So you put more money in, but you don't get the results.
Well, it must do, certainly from where I was. There was a steady line of people going through the surgeries, having heart ops, and that was my first op was at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'm so glad you come through it. Okay, and happy health, Ian. I hope you get better soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yeah,
that's the sharp end of it, isn't it?
And I liken you a bit to a teacher or to a nurse, and I presume you're well paid, is that they can't work from home. Just like you've got to be in the studio every day. For people like Expad and Tess Dunlop, we can do a bit of writing at home every so often.
You're here as well.
Those teachers, today I am, but tomorrow I won't be. Those teachers at the coalface, day in, day out, that's an unattractive prospect nowadays. So they have to be offered a better pay pattern.
There's no dispute about the work that they do, and they are the backbone of our country. But, offering over and above inflation pay rises 2 weeks into a new government where you've got junior doctors who, again, do a fantastic job but have been calling for a 35% increase in their pay. Well, that's ridiculous. But where does it stop? So you'll continue to have unions pressing for more money. That's what they do.
The inflation is back down to 2%. So they've done, at least the last government did do that. So whether or not you can then have overinflation pay rises, I don't know.
No, you just line in the sand it. This is what you're getting. It's the beginning of our administration. We've given it to you. Now shut up.
Good luck with that.